Early this morning, I was sitting on my front porch, drinking coffee and reading Luke 9 and 10, and I wrote something in my journal that was phrased as a note to leaders or a note to pastors, and I want to read the quick statement I wrote. Here it is. You're not as ready as you think you are, and Jesus doesn't care. A note to leaders, you're not as ready as you think you are, and Jesus doesn't care. Keep that in mind as leaders as we're working on empowering and equipping the next generation and other leaders and trying to multiply the leadership load. They're not as ready as we hope they would be, and Jesus doesn't care. He obviously cares about our souls and He cares about our lives, but He's not that concerned that we're not quite as mature, or maybe not even almost as mature as we should be, and that the people we're hoping to raise up in greater places of leadership responsibility and weight-carrying leadership, the fact that they're not where they should be and maybe never will be, He's not that concerned about that either. So, where did this idea come from? I want to read what I was reading this morning, Luke chapter 10, verses 1 through 4. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them on ahead of Him, 2 by 2, in every town and place where He Himself was about to go. And He said to them, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into His harvest. Go your way. Behold, I am sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. Carry no money bag, no knapsack, no sandals, and greet no one on the road. Now, as I was thinking about that, I wrote down a few notes that I think are pertinent to leadership. Jesus sent these disciples, these 72, or some translations say 70, but He sent them where He was about to go. I would sure rather be sent where Jesus already is, or where Jesus has already done something significant, where Jesus has already done some great work, but He sent these people where He was about to visit. And many of us are in places where it doesn't seem like Jesus has ever been there, but He's about to. He sends His disciples in places He's about to visit. Secondly, He sent them to plentiful harvest fields. And I believe that no matter where He sent you, there is a plentiful harvest field. We just need to find it. Then it says He sent them where there's a labor shortage. A lot of times in church planting, a lot of times in global mission, a lot of times in campus ministry, we look around and it seems like we're doing all the work. The shortage of spiritual laborers is a real thing. And many times when we're sent somewhere on mission with God, where we feel like there's a shortage of laborers, because there is, He also sent them to wolves. He sent them, this is a metaphor, but as sheep among wolves. And whatever the wolves look like in your context, they're there. Don't be surprised when Jesus sends you like a lamb among wolves. That's part of the call. And then finally, He sent them with no money. They were underfunded. I believe in fully funded mission, but often that's an aspirational belief more than a reality. This sending that Jesus did, this idea of sending them where He hasn't been yet, He's about to go, sending them where there's a plentiful harvest but few laborers, sending them where there are wolves trying to devour us, sending seemingly underfunded, reminds me of my experience in campus ministry, church planting, and global missions at different times in my life. If that sounds familiar, then we're probably in a good place, we're probably on track. Now, I want to go to these first two words in verse 1. After this. The King James, I think the one I was reading this morning, said, after these things. What things? ESV says, after this. After what? It's an unfortunate place for a chapter break. Because when he says after this, it sets the context of this sending. Jesus appoints, he sends these 70 or 72 others. He sends them in this mission context, and you can read the amazing things that happened because they went. But after what? After this, after these things. If we go back to verse 46, there's a story, and these are the after things that matter to this context. There's a story about an argument that arose within the 12 disciples about who was the greatest. Can you imagine that? They're sitting around arguing about who's the greatest. And Jesus answered that. They didn't know he was listening, and he comes in and says, let me explain who the greatest is. And in essence, he said, it's none of you. Because what he did, he brought a child and put him in the midst. When I read that, this image of Jesus bringing a child, someone much younger than them, and someone who was not a part of that group. So they're arguing among themselves, which one of us, right here, who's the greatest? It never dawned on them that there was greatness outside of that circle. It never dawned on them that maybe someone who's not yet with them is going to be much greater than they. It didn't dawn on them that maybe someone even younger than us might be greater than us. It's a wake-up call for leaders. Maybe the greatness is not even with us yet. Maybe the greatest is so much younger, we don't even recognize it yet. But here's the point. They're arguing. These people, his leaders, are arguing about their own greatness. Then we go to the next story in chapter 9, verse 49. And they see this guy casting out demons, which is what they were supposed to be doing. But they're arguing about who's the greatest. Someone else is doing what they should be doing. They don't know who this is. This person's not in their circle. And so you know what? They want to cancel him. Cancel culture is not new. Cancel culture was all the way back here. We need to cancel this guy. He's out doing what we're supposed to be doing. He's probably doing it more effectively, apparently, than we are because we're arguing about our own greatness. We're stuck in our own arrogance. This guy's out doing the work, maybe not perfectly. So should we make him stop is what they ask. They say, actually, we tried to make him stop. Jesus, what do we do about this? And of course, Jesus said, look, just as long as somebody's doing it. He wasn't that upset about it. So we start with a story of this arguing about who's the greatest. We move now into a story of trying to cancel those who aren't a part of our group, even though they're doing the things we're supposed to be doing, even though they're apparently doing the will of God. And then it gets worse. Now they go to a village and their message is not received. They're not received. They're not honored. They don't experience hospitality like they had hoped. And then they said this, Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them? Wow. It's gone from cancel culture to kill culture. Lord, can we just kill these people? They don't deserve to live. Can we just kill them? The people who don't receive from us. And so you watch this flow of these stories. The first one, it's the believers there. They're together. They're arguing among themselves. Next, it's a believer doing the work of God who's not in their group but another. They don't like him either. They don't like each other. They don't like this other person. Now it's the people who aren't believers at all. They haven't received the message. Let's just kill them. But what's comical about this is their arrogance. Lord, what if we just call fire down? As if they could. Do you really think they could speak and call fire down? Now, their heart attitude is horrible, but their head is just as bad that they have these assumptions that they have all this power. And I can imagine Jesus rolling his eyes and just going, oh, what do I do? Will they ever learn? But it doesn't end there. It gets worse or stays on this bad track. Now they're going, and Jesus is speaking some things about the cost of discipleship. And they start making excuses. Lord, I'll follow you, but first let me do this. Lord, I'll follow, but first let me do this. In discipleship, there's not a but first. In discipleship, it is follow first. It is the will of Jesus first. Everything else comes second. And when we say, Lord, I'll follow, but first let me, we're already on the wrong track. There is no but first, and there is no let me. There is a follow him. And so they start making excuses. And so what we have is it goes from arrogance to this canceling, to this violent thing in them, to these excuses and this story, these stories of what's happening. It's not a good look. And then in verse 1, chapter 10, after this, Jesus sends on mission. And I thought about this because it's his 12 who are behaving badly. I don't know, maybe Jesus looks at these stories and after this he sends these 72, maybe because he's lost hope in the 12. Let me get some more because these guys don't get it. No, I don't think that's it, because we see them continually being sent along with these. I think what's happening is Jesus sees their flaws. They're just right in our face. He sends them anyway. Not only those, he adds to it. And the rest of this 72, they've had less training than these guys who are missing the point and messing up. Jesus sends them anyway. When I think about those first two words in chapter 10, verse 1, after this, or the King James says, after these things that are ugly, Jesus didn't lose hope in young leaders and next generation leaders. He's still empowered. Don't let the mistakes cause you to stop empowering leaders. Our job is to lead, to equip, and empower leaders. When Jesus says after this, the word for us is, even if the leaders we're about to send, even if the leaders we're working with have displayed not always the best attitude, not always a loving response to conflict and rejection and persecution, sometimes anger issues and arrogance, and sometimes they make excuses. They're not perfect. But after this, have the faith in the Holy Spirit and the confidence of God to send them on mission anyway. God matures us as we go on mission. We don't put the mission on pause until we reach some level of perfect maturity, because it'll never happen. We grow as we go.